Hi, everyone. So we'll open this meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. I have a little thing to read. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Community Preservation Committee during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. And now just gonna announce everyone that is here on the committee. I'm here, Pamela Toby, and my co-chair, Matt Lundberg is here. Carrie McKenna is here. Jennifer Lee Levitz Aronson is here. Heidi Wakeman, Bob Whitmarsh, and Bill Cuff. Hello, you're here. I'm glad you got in. And then just a quick, to reiterate what Matt said last week at our meeting, just a little housekeeping. We're gonna have the presentations from the remaining applicants tonight. We ask that they keep their presentations to 5 minutes so that we can be sure we have time to ask questions and get some answers. The other thing I want to note is we will not be having public comment at this meeting. We'll save that for the next meeting that we have after we've had time to kind of review everything after the presentations. So unless we have anything else, we will kick it off. Let me just pull up the agenda. I don't know where I put it. All right. That's not the right one. Sorry. Here we go. All right. So the first thing on the agenda is obviously the application presentations. First up, we will have the Gloucester 400th. And Jamie, who is here from the Gloucester 400th? Is Laura ready to go?
Yep, so I will promote Mia and Laura to panelists. They will just need to unmute and they should be able to speak.
All right, there we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And we
Okay,
can see
thank you. Oh, good. So I'm Laura Ventimiglia. I'm the director of Gloucester 400 Celebration. And joining me is Mia Millefolier, who I just saw quickly, so I know she's on. She's the volunteer grant writer for this particular project. And we thank you kindly for this opportunity to present our proposal, preserve, promote, and celebrate the stories of Gloucester's legacy. As a background, and as you probably already know from reading our application, Gloucester 400 is sponsored by the Gloucester Celebration Corporation, a nonprofit organization formed in 1998 with the mission to advance, preserve, and celebrate Gloucester's history and culture. Gloucester 400 will launch a year-long celebration of citywide educational programs, activities, and events commemorating Gloucester's founding in 1623. This effort will advance community engagement and pride in our city and promote Gloucester's unique position and rich heritage throughout the state and nation. Now, you may already have noticed that we've begun to honor Gloucester's past through our premier event, the 400 Stories Project, based on the quadricentennial tagline, "Our People, Our Stories." A goal of this project is to gather 400 or more stories for historical preservation, to preserve them in their own right by publishing them online in a variety of formats on the Gloucester 400 website, thereby making them free and available to the general public, but also publishing them in a commemorative book. Further preservation of the stories will occur through a digital timeline, which links them to historical events in Gloucester's past, creating, if you will, an online museum that will continue to thrive after Gloucester's anniversary year in 2023. To that end, our CPA project is dedicated to an historic preservation that includes the restoration and preservation of documents, photographs, historical artifacts, and interviews of Gloucester's citizenry across the centuries that will be linked to the digital timeline. Toward this project goal of a digital timeline, we have formed a collaboration with our partners, City of Gloucester Archives Department, the Sawyer Free Library, and the Cape Ann Museum to curate significant historical and cultural resources. This historic preservation project has the following objectives. 1, to preserve, enhance, restore, and conserve historical documents, audio recordings, video recordings, and photographs that will be preserved in a variety of formats, including online historical timelines, online stories, documentaries, publications, photographs, and promotional materials that celebrate the narrative of Gloucester's rich history. The process in this type of historical preservation includes the following steps. 1, repairing, if possible, the original document, artifact, interview, or photo. 2, making a duplicate of the original by digitizing, scanning, photographing, or another appropriate method. 3, putting aside the original in an archival quality box or boxes to preserve it from further decay. And 4, using and working from the duplicate copy. A second objective in this historical preservation project is to make accessible to the public, both local, state, and nationally, the historical importance of Gloucester and its citizens today and across the centuries. And finally, a third objective is to ensure compliance with components of the American Disabilities Act. The portion of our project noted in the CPA grant application is budgeted at $90,555, and our funding request is slightly more than 50%, or $49,405. The CPA funds will be allocated specifically to the items mentioned in the application, which are, in one form or another, threatened from being accessed and used by the general public because of their current conditions. The funds will be allocated among our partners, the Sawyer Free Library, the City of Gloucester Archives, Cape Ann Museum, and Gloucester 400. And it's probably important to note that ownership of all the materials will be retained by the appropriate partner. By far, these items and the CPA grant activities do not represent the totality of the Gloucester 400 Stories project and digital timeline. We are on the verge of initiating a major fundraising campaign that will supplement the CPA funds and support the remaining balance of the 400 Stories project. We do not anticipate unexpected expenses that would bring us back to the CPA committee. In fact, we view the CPA grant as only one funding source combined with others to complete the vision of Gloucester's Story Project and digital timeline. Thank you so much for inviting us this evening and for your consideration of our grant application.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So I guess let's open it up to the committee. Does anyone have any questions they want to start with? Matt, you can kick us off.
So first, Mia and Laura, I apologize so much. I got my emails mixed up. You must have thought I was on another planet earlier today.
No, I only thought that for about a half a minute. And then I just quickly, gave you the benefit of the doubt and said, oh, he's brilliantly given me a heads up as to how to prepare.
Yeah, I gave Laura advice on how to prepare for a totally different presentation. So, but I do have some questions about this one.
Okay.
The first one I had was in the budget. Could you talk a little bit about the Fort and the Fins piece, and specifically the transcription piece? Because that was the biggest piece that was broken out in the budget, and I was just curious about that piece.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Mia to jump in because Mia's done a great job working together to write the grant. So the materials that we have from the fort, the Cape Ann Fins, and I believe it's the 1970s Oral History Project that's housed currently at the library. All of those are interviews that have happened in the past. For example, the fort interviews are on an outdated video format, so nobody can view them because the equipment is no longer available. So the goal is to digitize all of those. And by digitizing, it means they move into a format that can be uploaded to the computer. And then, in fact, the library oral history project has already been digitized. So anybody can go on and access those interviews and listen to them. The transcription allows us to put into a written format the actual interview. So you
Yes.
digitize the interview to be able to access it. And then you transcribe it to also be able to access it. And the purposes may be different. So one example is a researcher might find a written transcript more easy to use
Got it.
than the audio. But also, and I think more critically, an audio interview is great for somebody who's not hearing impaired, but doesn't help somebody who is hearing impaired. And vice versa, a written transcript is better for somebody who is, who can have the computer read to them.
Yep.
So somebody can be sight impaired and still have a written document read to them. They can hear it or they can read it. So, really what we're trying to do is make the resources available in various formats so that people in different walks of life or for different purposes has access to them.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have a point that I wanted to raise that I was speaking about with Jamie earlier.
Mhm.
So we received some guidance from the coalition, the Community Preservation Coalition, around some pieces of this,
Mhm.
and around the historic preservation category. It kind of limits it, like you cannot create historical materials or something, if that's the right way to phrase it. So you kind of answered it a little bit on Matt's question, but are there, for the pieces that the CPA is listed as funding that are the digitized,
Mhm.
sorry, my son's in the background, so please forgive.
I love that.
Are there other, I know that there's some other pieces on your budget that you all are funding that are like the restore, the ones that are digitized that we're covering. Are there any other sources of funding that might be able to cover that if we're not allowed to, if it doesn't kind of conform
Right.
to the standards? Does that make
Right.
sense? Sorry.
It does. So let me actually answer that two different ways, if I could. So as I mentioned, we're on the verge of beginning a major fundraising campaign. And we recognize that the CPA funds would only be part of what we would use. So yes, there are other funds that we'll be researching and applying for. So we'll be looking at other grants. Mia's helping us right now identify other grants to use. We'll also be looking for sponsorships and donations. And we have the commemorative medals and merchandising as a means of fundraising. And also there'll be some other smaller fundraising activities, for kids, to get kids involved in learning about the 400th and so forth. I think, so yes, that's the simple answer to your question, Pam, is yes.
Okay.
I think though, for me, the more complicated piece of that is the realization for me, when I started my own work in research and historical preservation, for me, learning what the process is. So I understand you have guidelines to go by. And one of the reasons I mentioned the steps in terms of preservation was that exactly that digitizing might on the surface not appear to be a preservation act, but it is in fact, if you can't access an interview because of outdated equipment. So just for a real quick example, I came in my own research, which is mainly related to my family and history, our family history back in Italy, came across a document that was 120 years old. Now the document was in okay shape, had a couple of tears in it, but it wasn't anything that we would bother the original by repairing. But what we did instead was scan that to digitize it. and scan it professionally. And then that document got rolled up and put away in an archival box and won't get touched again. And so then the duplicate, the digitized copy is what will be used. So I know that's probably a little bit different type of preservation than the CPA is used to. But I guess I just wanted to make the case for that approach to preserving history.
Oh, of course. I totally see the value in it. I mean,
Yeah.
I did want to flag it because we do have some, I mean, it seems like there's some constraints. So it's just something to consider. And maybe if there's places where we can plug in other locations on the budget if needed, I just wanted to kind of keep that in your
Sure.
mind, just in case.
Right,
So,
right, right.
yeah, just in case, you never know.
Yeah. And, obviously, whatever, if the committee determines that part of our application is fundable, then we'll use those funds for those particular pieces and, look elsewhere. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Bill, I think you have a question.
Yes, I had a couple of questions and a nice presentation, Laura. Thank you. I'm new to this whole digitizing and storing this type of information. As a member of the public, where would it be stored and how would we get access to it?
I love it. Great question.
I love your backdrop, by the way.
Oh, do you? Thank you. I had nothing to do with that. Our marketing person, Christine Armstrong, developed that. So thank you. So we've worked really hard. When I say we, those of us connected to Gloucester 400, to make sure that anything we do for the 400th that we leave behind is accessible. So our first partnership that we entered into was with the Sawyer Free Library. It's a public institution.
Right.
It's free to people. So for the digital timeline will actually, which is going to begin soon, will be housed on their server right from the start. And so people will be able to access it from the Sawyer Free Library website. The stories on the Gloucester 400 website, which are available, we've already started publishing them. Those will stay on the Gloucester 400 website. And then in 2023, we'll have worked with the library to move those over. So they'll still be available. Everything will be available basically through the Sawyer Free Library.
Okay.
They've been a great partner. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody can't access them through the Cape Ann Museum website either, because as an example, because when somebody clicks onto the digital timeline, so let's say that I click onto the Sawyer Free Library, I go into the digital timeline, I click on a document, I click on something that I want to see. April 1st, 1975, the Bookstore of Gloucester opens on Main Street. So I want to see what that's all about. I click on that. Those records might be being held. There might be photographs, there might be documentation, a program, an opening celebration program that might be housed at the Cape Ann Museum. That click is going to take me to the Cape Ann Museum website. So when I mentioned also that any of the materials will be maintained by their original owners, we also worked really hard to have people maintain their own copyrights, not just the associations, the organizations, but the individual people. And so the digital timeline will take people back and forth among the different partner sites. And even, let's say, Manship Studios, who's expressed an interest in being included on the timeline, then that point on the timeline will jump out to the Manship Studios. And so vice versa. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I know you talked about fundraising. Have you raised any money at all for this project at this point? Or where are you in your additional fundraising?
So another good question. We've raised small amounts. I don't want to blame everything on the pandemic, but just when the tri-chairs were ready to really move, they had, been, and I'm relatively new to the 400th, so I haven't been on board from the very beginning. But just as they were ready to move forward in a big way, both with the Stories Project and fundraising, the pandemic hit. And we all agreed that with the pandemic, we just didn't feel as though we could fundraise when there were so many important health and food insecurity issues and people who needed money beyond the 400. So when I say, so we have had some small grants that we've received for that. We had, for the Stories Project, we had a $50,000 state earmark in their 1919, 1920, I think it was, fiscal budget from the state. We had a small grant from the institution, the bank Institution of Savings. And I think there's been a couple of other small donations specifically for the Stories Project, because, you know, lots of other things that are going to be happening.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that question, is that not only sort of local foundations and local corporations have prioritized their giving to meet the basic needs or shelter needs of the pandemic. I think some of our larger foundations during the pandemic have been the same. So what we're starting to see is the landscape is beginning to change. So the foundations, the national foundations, state foundations, family foundations are beginning to go back to their original mission.
Right.
So I say this is because I feel confident there are foundations, there's foundational support out there.
Okay, thank you, Mia.
Thanks, Mia. Thanks.
And then my last comment was just a follow up to what Pam mentioned about the, you know, and you did a nice job of breaking down each project. And it breaks down to the digitizing versus restoration. And it looked like to me about 40,000 of what you're proposing in the budget is more for restoration. So about half is restoration and half is more of the digitizing and recordings.
Right, right. And again, so for example, the Butler book from the library, which is fallen apart. So it's the the New England Council of Conservation, or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't have that name right on the tip of my tongue. But every time that they conserve, which is to repair, they automatically digitize and scan it because they put the original away. Part of the cost of them doing business for us with anybody, with any client. They repair, they digitize, they put it in an archival quality box, and then it goes away. So once that preservation happens, if there's no digitization or scanning, you don't have access to it. And so they do that as an automatic part of their conservation.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense to do that digitizing,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
yeah, okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you
I just
both.
want to say, sorry, I just
No,
wanted
go
to
for
say,
it.
hi, I'm Heidi, and
Hi, Heidi.
Laura, I work with, what is her name? Virginia McKinnon.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we're in a memoir group together, and she's a delightful piece of Gloucester history. So it's nice to meet you
Thank you.
sort of in person.
Yeah.
Because she's mentioned your name and mentioned this project. And
Yeah, in fact, last week and this week, I've been working on Virginia's, one of her stories. Whenever somebody submits a story, a written story, it goes off to an editor. We have several professional editors who have volunteered their services. So hers went off, and then when the editor sends their comments back, I put them in a type of a format so that's easier for the author to read.
Yeah.
So I know I want to get hers as soon as possible because she's so excited about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And then
Heidi, for mentioning.
I was also
that.
I was going to say too, have you applied to the Mass Cultural Council or Gloucester Cultural Council? Because it seems like right up their alley for this project as well.
It is, it's on the prospect list as one of the foundations we'll be approaching. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Heidi.
And all thoughts welcome. Yes.
Yes, exactly. All ideas. Anything else?
I think we're good. Thank you both so much for joining us.
you.
Really, and thank you for answering all these questions. We really appreciate it.
Oh,
Great.
no, thanks. Thank you again. It was a great experience for Mia and I working together. It was our first time working together. Mia's another volunteer, has volunteered her services, so I appreciate the opportunity. We both do. Thanks so
both
much.
do.
Have a nice rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi. All right, so next up we have Hammond's Castle. Linda, if you are, Jamie, if you don't mind promoting Linda.
Linda, you have been promoted. If you want to unmute, you should be able to speak.
Okay, I'm sorry. For some reason, I lost my connection and I don't seem to be on video. There I am.
There you go.
Hello,
Linda.
Good evening. Thank you, committee, for being interested in our proposal for a grant and for meeting and letting us present ourselves for this particular project. If you could share your screen with me, I have a very short video presentation. It's 1 minute and 35 seconds that I'd like to start my presentation with.
Yes. Do you have the ability to do that? Are you good to share?
I do.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Okay. So now I'm going to go share and then go here. Can you hear or see?
John
it?
Hayes Hammond Jr. is well known for his Gothic-style castle home and museum in Gloucester, Massachusetts, but the inventor wasn't content merely to copy an architectural style. He wanted to blend his vision with pieces of actual medieval European structures. However, given their great age, some of these pieces need some help if they're going to survive to educate and inspire future generations, notably these picturesque arches next to Hammond Castle Museum's main entrance. Purchased by Hammond between 1930 and 1940, the arches originate from Couvent des Cordeliers at Auch in Gers, France, a 13th century monastery founded in 1259 by Franciscan monks. In their original location, these arches were part of the cloister section, a large garden separating different buildings in the monastery that provided an area for meditation. Cloisters are commonly expansive sections of monasteries, and the Couvent des Cordeliers at Auch is no exception. Hammond himself created his cloister section as an addition to the museum after its initial phase of construction was finished. The inventor insisted that this space retain the original purpose of a peaceful cloister. We at Hammond Castle Museum share this vision and wish to preserve the beauty of these arches. As you can see from these images, time and the elements have complicated our efforts. We have no desire to see these arches, which have stood for nearly 800 years, crumble into ruins, which is why we are asking for your support in helping us repair and restore the arches to their former glory. Thank you.
Back. So that
Oh.
gives you an idea of basically what we're trying to do with this preservation program. The museum has stood, actually we are open for our 46th season as a museum. And the mission of John Hayes Hammond was to share his artifacts, his love for art, and the castle, as well as his inventions throughout the community, and to make it a very large focal point to open his home and share it with the community. So we are continuing in that process, and we have been able to develop lots of different programming and things to help educate our children as well as the adults through many new exhibits that we have put together here in the castle. But we found that with the aging and the time and the weather, the conditions that we face being right here on the water, that our artifacts, our exterior artifacts, do need some TLC, and we have a proposal to do a restoration on them. They are, in fact, as you can see from the cracks and the missing mortar, and also in my proposal, I included photographs that I'd taken just to show you an up-close vision of the damage that has happened to them, so that you can see how badly they do need repair. And we want to repair them now before it's too late to be able to save them, and also for the safety of our visitors. I think our arches that overlook the ocean are probably one of the most unique and most popular places for people to come. This past weekend was the Gloucester Prom, and I had a group of people call and ask if they could come and just have their photos taken in the archways or their pre-prom. And of course, we embrace that. We love having them come and share We did a special program last year for the graduates because they didn't have a graduation, but we invited them all to come up by appointment, but for free with their families to come and have themselves photographed throughout the castle, not just at the arches, but they seem to play a major role in what you first see when you enter our property, and they're just absolutely exquisite. And we want to protect them and we want to keep them. And they have such wonderful historic value as well as the beauty of the outside of the castle and our grounds. So basically that is what we are proposing to do. We have a time schedule so that we would like to start this construction in December, being that it would be very dangerous and awkward for us to do it during our season, because we do have a lot of weddings and photo shoots and things that come in here, as well as our visitors. And I hope we can get back to the number of visitations that we've had in the past. In 2019, we had over 35,000 people walk through the museum. So the museum attracts a lot of people from all over the country, as well as international travel, and brings them to Gloucester. And so we can be supportive to our community in so many ways, but we really want to keep this building in its as pristine a condition as we can, working with the materials that we have already that we have here. So we have a start date of December on this, and in our grant proposal there are conditions that we've set into it for winter preservation, setting up heaters and things like that, an encased situation where the construction, the masons can work in all weather and temperature, which is really quite helpful. And we're really hoping that we'll be able to complete this project by our opening April 1st of 2022. So it will be, it's a major project. As you can see from the budget and the request that we've made, the project itself is over $200,000. We have asked the CPA grant to fund 50% of this, which is $110,000. And I broke this figure out in a way so that there is contingency money built into the project, so that in case we run into difficulties or project complications, we can subsidize what our that element is that we built into the budget. So we have various ways of fundraising the rest of the money through matching grants. We have several grant applications that are out right now. We also are holding over 8 fundraising events this coming season at the museum. So check our website out because there's tons of activities and fun things to do. We're doing movies in the month of July on our back lawn, and they're all family as well as adult movies. So if you want to cruise through the list of those things, there's fun things to do. We're having an Arms and Armor demonstration twice this summer to raise money. We also are having a falconry exhibit. We're having sword fighters and archers coming for the Knights of Brotherhood. And we're having a Renaissance singing day, all ways that will bring lots of people to our community and have the celebration and enjoyment of the castle and our grounds as well. I think that's about all, unless you have some specific questions for me. I did go out and research with many proposals for this. I had a local architect come and look at the projects as well and review the bidding on them. Anthony Mackey of Mackey Architectural Business, and he was very helpful with me in putting the proposal, the financial proposal, and actually the physical building and rebuilding of these archways so that they're properly done, they're restored properly, they have the correct grout or cement that's going to be used and dyed to the appropriate color to match the rest of the building. Digging out the old mortar, and that is the process. The digging of the old mortar is unknown at the moment because this building was built between 1926 and 29. So we've got 90 years of history and wear in it, but that mortar is starting to deteriorate. And as it has, water has invaded it and causing, with the thaws and freezing and thaw process, it's caused more and more mortar to escape, causing what we feel are weaknesses that need to be restored and refurbished and making a stronger foundation for them. So.
Thank you, Linda. Does
Welcome.
anyone have any questions they want to start with? Go for it, Matt.
Thank you. Hey, Linda, I have two questions.
Yes.
The first one is, and I couldn't remember, I looked at the document of the folks you got contracting. Are you working with the same people who did the Clara Story work?
We're not.
Different. Okay.
Different. We're working with masons.
Yeah, it's a different project. Got it.
Exactly. And we've also looked at our bids to make sure that we're following historic preservation requirements, that these will be restored properly with, you know, every requirement that they have to make sure that we're doing this correctly.
Right. Right. And my second question was, there's no question it's a big project, and it needs to be. Overall, looking forward, this is the second project we've done with CPC funds. What do you see in the future? Are there more restoration pieces that you think are going to be there in the next 5-10 years?
We probably will. We're going to be working on the envelope of the building in the next couple of years. And we would love to have your support as well with that. I really feel like we are a piece of history, and that the Hammonds played a major role in Gloucester and the development of Gloucester, and the fact that John Hammond Jr. settled here to be an inventor and have his laboratories here, that we really have a real foundation to our community, and really appreciate the support of this committee, especially in helping us restore and keep this building in good condition so that we can stay open and that we can attract and, you know, improve on the education of our kids. You know, that's one thing that we have hundreds of school children that come through here every year from every background that you can imagine. And they are looking through purified eyes at history that has been made, and also with Hammond's success as an inventor. You know, he has over 400 patents, and they were things that are what we use today in our daily lives, which were influenced by his inventions. Drones, for instance, or just radio control, torpedoes, guided missiles. Just he had over 100 war type patents that he sold to the U.S. government during World War I and II. So there's a lot here to be preserved. And the castle, to be honest, has fallen over the years on some hard times. There hasn't been a lot of attention given to it. And I came on board here about 2.5 years ago, and have started to build things back up and to build our reputation and to spread our marketing where I feel that it gets the most benefit, to draw people to us, and to also open the castle to our community. We have a number of programs that we've laid out for Gloucester people to come and enjoy free, as well as children's programs the same. So I really feel that, long answer to a very simple question, yes, we will have additional requests for funding as we continue with this restoration. So.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to be so long-winded.
All right.
Jennifer Lee and then Carrie, sorry.
Okay, I think my position on the committee is to open mouth, insert foot. But I would just like to, when you mentioned how many patents he owned.
Yes.
Where is that money? I mean, who gets the benefit of his patents? Is there any way that, has that been looked at?
Yes, it definitely has been researched, and his patents have all expired. Actually, the last patent on his death in 1965 has expired as well, and that was actually issued after his death. But we've looked into it. When Hammond died, he willed this property to the Archdiocese of Boston, the Catholic Church. And the church came in, and Hammond's wishes were for this to be a museum. He wanted this to be his legacy. He knew his inventions over the period of time would be improved upon, and he would not be remembered for all that he contributed. However, he felt that this stone building would represent some strength and have the stamina to withhold the years and to share the artifacts and the visions that he created. Our clerestory, which surrounds the courtyard, it's a 15th century French village that he brought from Europe and installed into the walls of the museum. So we looked at that, and we've looked at every possibility of funds that could have come to us. When the Archdiocese of Boston decided they no longer wished to run a museum, they incorporated the castle and turned over the running of it by a board of directors. There was an endowment at the time that was given to the Catholic Church for the upkeep and care of this building, and it was not put into the incorporation. It was not included in any funding that came to us. So over the years, we've had to take measures such as selling some of the property off, which we now have neighbors, and they're wonderful, and we try to be good neighbors to them all. But that was the only way that we could raise money or had money that we could do major projects like septic systems and things like that, to keep this building up to code. So there were no funds that came from his estate at all.
Or the Archdiocese.
Or the Archdiocese, sorry to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carrie, did you have a question?
Yeah, so you actually touched on one of my questions, and which was the community days that you mentioned in the application. I was curious if they are free to Gloucester residents, and how often, how many times in a year, or what kind of events can people go there for no charge?
Numerous times, Carrie. What we've done, we had a free kids day during the April vacation, and with a very nominal fee for adults, because we wanted them to, we were at that time, we had restrictions on the number of people that could come to the museum still, and we were abiding under the COVID guidelines. So we did that by appointment with a nominal fee for adults, and all the kids were invited free. We had a wonderful turnout. We do a great trick or treats for kids. We're no longer doing the House of Terror, by the way. So cross that off your list, because it was too disruptive to the castle. But we do trick or treats. We also have a Santa program that we invite underprivileged children to the castle in December through Pathways and through the YMCA. They supply us with and set up arrangements for families to come here, and the kids have a chance to be with Santa, have their photo taken. They take away a beautiful present, a gift to have under their tree, things like that. And we're developing more and more programs like that, like the kids coming for their prom pictures. And just anytime I get a call from a city group, I make special allowances for them to come and use the facility at their discretion. So we try and service this community as much as we can. Could we possibly afford to offer a day, a week, or a month? It's something that is in my future plans for free admission to Gloucester residents. It's something at the moment I can't afford, but it definitely is one of the top 10 items on the agenda for our board to address, and something that I'd very much like to do.
Do you have any updates on the grant applications that you have out? I mean, are you feeling it's likely you're going to be receiving these or not?
I think we will. Yeah, I think we have a very strong chance of doing that. But if you look at our outline of how else we can support this, it will be through private donations. Also, we have a strong credit line with the Cape Ann Savings Bank, which we just recently had acquired this past year. to use for things like this, and the discretionary funds of the museum, you know, opening our doors and being able to bring visitors back in to help support us with our tours has been phenomenal. We've been absolutely packed every weekend this spring as well. And we also do weddings to help support our financing as well. They are running super strong because last year there were no weddings, and you know, we lost quite a bit there. We had over 40 weddings planned last year, which we canceled, and 50% of them went away, 20% came over to 22. So we had a nice foundation to start, but it wasn't fresh money. It had already been deposits made and things like that. So, you know, we're looking to beef that up. We're looking for more corporate functions to be here. And that's something as part of our marketing plan to build that up. And all those funds come in a way that they're being a donation to the museum for use for projects such as the rebuilding of the archways.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Especially the last couple of years since you stepped in there. It seems like there's really been a lot going on and a lot happening there. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. I really love it. You know, you can get up in the morning every day and say, I love my job. I can't wait to get there. And every day it has new challenges. And that's what makes it so fun and exciting as well. And I think the support from the community to us in so many ways has been magnificent. You know, when I'm out in public and people come over and they're so excited about the things that they see happening and the program, the breadth of programming that we've been able to offer new, exciting, it's still part of our rebuild and our coming back out. So it's exciting for me as well. But thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Linda, thank you so much.
You're
If
welcome.
you need anything else, let us know. We really appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing from you with whatever is perhaps the next step. And I thank you very, very much for the consideration of this application. It's something that will really help the museum to keep the beautiful archways that we have here, and so that the public can continue to enjoy them. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
You
Take care.
too. All right, next we have the Gloucester Meeting House. And I believe Charles is in the waiting room. Jamie, do you want me to promote or do you want to promote him?
I can do it.
Cool.
Thank you, though. So Charles, you should be promoted now. You may just have to unmute yourself before you speak.
Can you see me now?
Yes, hello,
Can you hear
Charles.
me? Okay, thank you very much for having me this evening. I will try to keep this as brief as I can. I'm Charles Nazarian. I'm the president of the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation. The foundation was modeled after the Old North Foundation in relation to Boston's Old North Church, in being a secular 501c3 devoted to preservation of Gloucester's oldest meeting house from 1806. Our mission is to preserve the building as a cultural venue, as a place for all kinds of community events, and to be a civic hub where people can meet both physically and virtually. As many of you know, we do a summer festival called Music on Meeting House Green. And due to COVID, we were unable to do that last year, although we did it virtually, and we were able to raise almost $2,000 for each of our nonprofit partners. And the way the summer series works when it's in person is that admission is free. All the expenses for the musicians and our overhead and all that are paid by our sponsors in advance. And all we ask of the audience is to make a free will donation during intermission. And we're expecting a a really large crowd this year because there are still very few things that are scheduled. And we're one of the few outdoor concert series that exists. So the condition of the green is of tremendous concern to us. In recent years, there have been several things that have really impacted the safety of the green. And as many of you know, this is really just about the only green space available to neighbors in the historic district. Every place else has basically been developed or paved over. This is the one place where people come and walk their dogs, play with their kids on an everyday basis. And so preserving the green space itself is very important. It also has a great history going back to the original building in 1806. But the current condition is the result of several things. One is that when the Dutch elm disease came through, the original, or at least the 100-year-old elms that were there were lost. And thanks to the Corliss family, new trees were planted, but they were Norwegian maples. We've come to learn over the years that that's an invasive species, but they still made a beautiful canopy. Unfortunately, they're starting to completely fall apart. In fact, we've had to take 2 of them down just in the past 6 months, one due to storm damage, half of it came down on its own. And they're full of termites. Their root systems have started crawling over all the lawn areas. So when people come for an outdoor concert or an event, the terrain is very uneven. And so it's become increasingly a safety issue for us. We also have lost the safety of what was a perimeter fence between beautiful granite columns, which still exist. There was a wonderful tubular cast iron system that enclosed the green. And for the kind of program that we do, it's very important that we have people who are able to be safely on the green as opposed to exposed to Church Street or to Middle Street traffic. As you probably know, for the summer series, there's a food service, a different one for every event, as well as a different musical event and a different nonprofit partner. There also were gates originally going back to 1806. Those are long gone. And there's also an issue with ADA access to the green. You can arrive on the green at the Middle Street end and be on level terrain. But as you go down Church Street, the terrain drops on that side, and it drops on the other side, which is the access to the building where we have a small parking lot, but also restrooms are available. And I wonder if I might be able to screen share with you in a moment. Part of what we're doing is to create 2 paths that meet ADA standards in terms of accessing Church Street and accessing the building via the Gould Court parking lot. Another aspect of the project has to do with the platform in front of the building. Many of you know that the building itself was raised in 1868 during a major renovation. It was originally quite close to the grade, but in 1868 it was lifted about 9 feet in order to form the social hall downstairs for the 100th celebration of the first Universalist Church in America, which this is. And at that time, they used the original granite steps plus more Cape Ann granite that was dressed to form the entrance. But in the late 1960s, the granite pieces had moved, some had deteriorated, and instead of restoring the steps, they simply poured concrete over all of the original granite. And so the original steps with their beautiful dressing and Cape Ann granite markings and all that are buried underneath this concrete platform. The platform has started to crack apart. And so part of our proposal is to create a new platform using all of the original historical granite, but to shape it differently so that it will be suitable for the outdoor concerts and also for other events. For example, theater, which we'd like very much to do a theater in the park type of program once the platform is suitable. At the moment, what we have to do in summer is bring in 3 wood platforms and attach them to the staircase in order to provide a place for the musicians and all of that. So it's a very much a multifaceted project. One other part of it, which is very important to the long-term programming of the Meeting House, is that we currently do allow for some of interior events, we allow people to park on lawn, but this is not sustainable. And as we're planning to return the interior of the building in the next phase to its full 600-seat capacity, we need to have as much parking as we can. On the other hand, it would be crazy to put down a new lawn and then allow people to park on it. So part of what land design drew up for us in the architectural landscape plan is to use a 4-inch grid underneath the new lawn that will support it so that one will be able to park on it, excuse me, but not damage the lawn. And so it's a twofer. We get a beautiful lawn with an irrigation system that's nice and level, and the elms will be separated from the lawn with a nice mulched circle that's protected. But when we do need to bring people to big events in the building, we'll be able to park about 40 or 45 cars on the green. And so that's also a very important part of our long-term plan. If I could share screen with you for just a couple minutes, then I'll take any questions you have. And let me see if I can take us there quickly. Can you all see that? Is that
Yes.
visible?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so currently there are 4 groupings of the Norwegian maples. In order to give the trees more space, Doug Cook has proposed that we do 3 pairs, and this is the basic layout. The reproduction gates would go here at Middle Street. All of the wrought iron fencing would be restored. This is the new ADA path that we proposed from Church Street, and this is the new ADA path that would bring you down to the building access. This is what it would look like as an aerial green view. This is what it would look like with the cars parked. And then this is what the layout is for the parking arrangement. And something else I'd like to show you, if I may, is in the land design proposal. Take you all the way down here, if I may. This is a sketch of what the front would look like with the original granite reused for this whole area. It's a fairly complex project, as you could see from the application. It's about $100,000 out of our $340,000 project, but a very significant part of what we're hoping to do. And since we put in the proposal, I have made a preliminary set of plans. This is what things look like today. And that's what the stairs look like as an elevation form. This is the new area. And so here you can see there's a great deal more space available for music, for theater, for presentations. This is the new ADA walkway to Middle Street, and then to Church Street, excuse me. And then this is the other walkway in this direction. So I'll take any questions that you may have. Happy to fill you in on anything else. I'll try to be as brief as I can.
Thank you, Charles. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So hey, Charles, how you doing? It's nice to see you there.
Thank you, Ray.
I was wondering, how do you benefit from the events, the summer events that you do? I know how the nonprofits benefit, but I'm wondering, the other organizations, I'm wondering, how do you? benefit from them?
That's a really excellent question. Thank you for asking that question. The way we benefit from it primarily is from fulfilling our mission to be a civic hub. What we found when the foundation was formed in 2015, that there are all kinds of absolutely wonderful nonprofits and cultural institutions on Cape Ann. Very few of them interact with each other in any particular way. And we suddenly realized that we had an opportunity to facilitate not only them individually, but they're working together. So we made a deal with the first 8 that we worked with, that they would get all of the money that was collected, but they had to publicize everybody else's event. And everybody went along with that. The other way that we benefit is that the 9th event, which occurs after Labor Day, we take Labor Day weekend off in respect for the Schooner Festival and our own sanity. The very last event, the 9th event, is a fundraiser for the Meeting House Foundation. And we will be asking people this year to contribute to the restoration of the green in that process.
Right. And then one other question I had was is there any kind of consideration to opening up the parking for city parking? I know that you were talking about the scarcity of parking downtown, and is that at all a possibility or probably not?
It's a little hard for me to say for sure. I think that at the moment, for example, when we get a request from St. John's next door or for an event at the Sargent House, we have to say no, because we have to limit the parking to the absolute minimum. However, once we have safe parking for 40 or 45 cars, I see it more likely that we would probably make it available to other nonprofits or to St. John's next door. Just knowing the people at the church, I think they might be a little bit less likely to make it open as a municipal space. Just out of respect for the fact that once that happens, it's very hard to limit it. And then you've kind of lost control.
Right.
But for special events, absolutely.
I think you're doing a great job there, and I think it's going to be absolutely fabulous once it's completed.
Look forward to seeing you all on the green. We open on July 9th for Pathways for Children as the beneficiary.
Thanks, Carrie. This is Matt. I'm going to take over chairing the meeting for a moment. Pam had to step away for a minute. I've got 3 questions, Charles, if I may.
Absolutely, Matt. Go ahead.
My first one was, I know on the budget that a big contributor is the Save Americans Treasures applications.
Yes.
Is that somebody you guys have worked with before? Is it good odds of success? I mean, can you tell us more about that piece of it?
It's a new one for us, actually. We've had others in this area, such as the Massachusetts Cultural Council has twice helped us with about 120,000. But Save America's Treasures is particularly well suited to this because it's part of the National Park Service, and we fit into their park sort of vision in a way that very few places do. And we have made it through their initial round. Can I promise you that we're going to get 170K? Can't do it. But so far, so good.
Good. Now that was exciting. My next question was, I love the new front steps, and I might have missed this when you were presenting before. Is this similar or consistent with the original design of those steps before they got the concrete cover over? Or is it slightly different or what?
Well, unfortunately, there are no documents or photographs of the 1806 building. The earliest photographs that we have are after the 1868 renovation. And we can see how the granite steps were set up at that time. And then, of course, we can see what's buried under the concrete because we can still see the ends of the steps. We also have a document called Romancing the Stone that Jay McLaughlin wrote at the time that back in the 70s when the concrete was poured. And he's documented what he saw before the concrete was poured over it. But judging by the Meeting House in Newburyport, which is very similar to how this building would have looked in 1806, there would have only been 2 or 3 steps up from the grade into the entrance house. If you've seen the Newburyport Church, it's very similar in scale. And like most New England meeting houses, it was built close to the grade, and it didn't have a basement or a social space underneath. And so the simple answer is no, that we can't make it look like 1806. But what we can do is use the material in a creative way to feature it.
Gotcha.
And it's sort of a creative restoration, if you would.
Understood. And my last question was the ADA access from the Church Street side.
Yes.
Because there's, I apologize for not remembering, but I assume there's already ADA access into the building somewhere else, either further on Church Street or on the other side.
Yes,
I couldn't remember.
there is. At 10 Church Street, there's a side entrance. And if you go in, there is a lift that can take you down to the social hall.
That's right.
And a separate one that can take you up to the sanctuary.
Got it.
The difference here is that, if we have 200 to 500 people on the green and they need to access the facilities in the building, the one way that somebody who has a disability can get in without getting to a lift or going to the far end of the building is to come down that Gould Court side, and then they are right at the grade that the facilities are available.
Yep.
Also, when it rains, we hold the events indoors. And so that becomes the main entrance for people into the building. And that's completely ADA accessible this way.
Thanks. And those are my questions, and I'm looking forward to July 9th.
Great, great. Happy to be doing it again after last year.
Anybody else with questions for Charles?
Matt, I just have a quick question. Charles, I'm new to the committee, and I know you mentioned you had previously used some CPA funds. What did you use that for?
There are 2 events, 2 major CPA funds. 120,000 was given towards the fire sprinkler system project. This was a major step for preserving the building, since all of the other buildings like this in Gloucester were lost to fire. And the last one was the Temples building, which started out originally as, I believe, the Third Parish Congregational, and then it eventually became a Universalist church before the Temple purchased the building in 1959. And so it was an historic meeting house and burned to the ground because of the building next to it falling on it. The one before that was Trinity Church, which was right next door to the fire station. And a fire started in the walls and they were unable to stop it. It actually burned to the ground right next to the fire station. So that 120,000 that the CPA gave us went not only for a sprinkler for the entire building, including the tower, but it also helped to pay for fireproof insulation in the 12-inch wall pockets. And so even if a fire started in the walls, those walls are all protected. The second one is part of the ongoing Green Envelope project, and which will be completed this year. And that's the restoration of the tower, which is our major piece right now, that American Tower and Steeple is about to begin. And so that was, I believe, $130,000 from the CPA.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Anybody else?
Charles, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Very good. So Jamie, next up, I believe, is the Schooner Adventure Project. if you can see who's up and promote them, that'd be great.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry, I had to step away for a minute.
No problem, Pam. I will gladly relinquish the reins.
Thank you.
So I promoted Stefan, and I don't know if Jamie is here as well for the Schooner Adventure. I just don't know all the names for the applicants.
No,
Okay.
Pam might be the only one, or Jamie, sorry.
Excellent. Thank you.
Stefan, feel free to take it away.
Okay, well, good evening, thank you. I'm Stefan Edick. I'm the executive director of the Gloucester Adventure, Inc., which is the steward and operator of the Schooner Adventure. And this is, well, as simple as it gets in wooden vessel restoration. So I hope I can be brief, which I'm told I have difficulty doing. So, and the project, the background of the project, Adventure is a National Historic Landmark. She was Gloucester's all-time highliner as a fishing schooner, meaning of the 150 years of fishing from schooners out of Gloucester. She set the record for all-time dollar value of catch. And she was also the very last dory fishing schooner in the American fleet and under the American flag. She fished until 1953, when virtually all, well, by which point all the other vessels that were out there fishing had gone to much more modern and safer technology. In brief, she fished until 53. She was saved by being repurposed into a passenger vessel and brought up to the Penobscot Bay in Maine, which allowed for her to survive, honestly. And she was kept going until 1988, when Joe Garland, the local historian and newspaperman and author and civic activist, developed a relationship with Captain Jim Sharp, who is a figure who was the second captain of her as a passenger vessel, and persuaded him. Joe was concerned that there were no more schooners in Gloucester, and that a vital representation of a major part of Gloucester's history where it was no longer there. So he badgered Captain Sharp, I think, over the course of 7 or 8 years altogether, and Jim donated the vessel to the people of Gloucester in 1988. Which is at the time the organization was founded. And the vessel at that time needed extensive restoration work. It took considerable time for the initial fundraising to get started, but the fundraising started in 1996, or the restoration work started in 1996 and proceeded in stages until we completed it early in 2015, with the exception of interior spaces like the captain's cabin and the fishhole. This project has to do with her current activity, our mission, and the goal of the organization from Adventure's return to Gloucester has been to restore and preserve Adventure for the benefit of future generations, to enable Adventure to serve as a community resource for educational programming, focusing on maritime, cultural, and environmental issues, and operating the schooner at sea as a living piece of America's maritime history. And so the restoration work allowed us to petition the Coast Guard to recommission the vessel and recertificate her as a passenger vessel in 2015. At which point we were able to start carrying passengers and students. Since 2015, now operating, our goal has been to maintain a vigorous maintenance and preservation stance, And because A, it was the best way to respect the extraordinary restoration work that had taken place over the course of nearly 20 years. And then B, it's been my experience in a career. I'm a captain by trade. I've worked in tall ships for just about 30 years now. It's been my experience firsthand that deferred maintenance, particularly in older and historic wooden vessels, is an ineffective approach in that any project that's delayed winds up costing multiples of its original budget in very short order. So we've been keeping abreast of what the ship needs in terms of maintenance. She hauls out a minimum of 3 times on a 5-year schedule as mandated by the Coast Guard. And at each time, we have not just performed the basic maintenance projects, but been proactive about going in and replacing planking and other pieces of material before they became an issue, or more significantly, started to cause issues to other parts of the vessel's interior structure. And in this case, the project is about the rudder. And the rudder, if you can imagine it, is about the size of a 14-foot sailing dinghy and weighs about 1.5 tons. It's a large wooden structure. Of course, rudder steering is absolutely critical to operations. Operations are the way in which we connect best with the public. Also, operating a vessel is by far the most effective way to maintain it. A vessel that's operated regularly and crewed, and where regular attention is being paid to day-to-day maintenance, has a far greater chance at longevity than a vessel that sits dockside and is unattended large part of the time. So the project is relatively simple. Involves cranes and scaffolding and talent and ingenuity, but it is to remove that rudder, which involves disengaging it from the steering gear, which, like the vessel, dates from 1926 and is original to the vessel. Lowering down this large and heavy structure, laying it out in a workspace, and extensively evaluating its material condition, including the fastenings, particularly those. The rudder is comprised of several vertical strakes of planking that are approximately 3 inches thick by 10 inches wide by 12 feet long. And there are lateral fastenings that bind all of those together. To especially repair and replace the rudder post, which is the uppermost piece of the rudder. It is a piece of wood that's 8.5 inches in diameter and about 7 feet long, and it connects the rudder to the steering gear. So this is a critical component in the operation and safety. Last time the rudder was removed was in about 2010, and best practice is for a rudder like this to come out at minimum once every 10 years for inspection and repair, unless of course it gets damaged somehow otherwise. And so it's certainly due, and together with our shipwright, we've been keeping a close eye on it. The original plan was to include it in the haul out period in 2020. But like many other organizations, our plans were significantly disrupted, and our fundraising stream is included in that disruption. As we reemerged when we did the haul out period here just in May of this year, for budgetary reasons, and because it was deemed prudent and safe by the shipwright and a maritime surveyor, we postponed the work until 2022. But I can tell you, yes, we postponed the work to 2022. What we also learned, and I submitted this application about halfway through the 1 month long yard period. And one of the beautiful parts about wooden vessel restoration is that, unlike wooden building restoration, half of your project and half of your work list is underwater the vast majority of the time. So these haul out periods are the only opportunity to thoroughly assess material condition and make maintenance plans. And what we discovered about the project was two things. One is it changes the timeline that's included in the grant proposal. Initially, we'd been planning on hauling the vessel out in October of next year. In order to afford more time and to make sure that the rudder is squared away for safety's sake before beginning the sailing season, we'll be switching that yard period back to March and April. On top of that, we discovered an additional scope of work, including what appears to be at this point much more work than we'd anticipated with the vessel's stem, which is the major vertical structural member in the bow, and it's effectively what ties everything together in the front of the boat. So we need to get in and make some do a thorough exploration and considerable repair there. So it's our total estimated cost for the 2022 haul out started at about 60,000. This is largely basic things, replacement of a couple of planks in the rudder, and some attention to the stem. Now the additional scope of work could raise that to $90,000 or more. So the other thing that we were able to incorporate is some research done by a prominent naval architect who joined our board in the last year, a fellow named Jim Taylor out of Marblehead. And he has had an affection for schooners for a good long time, even though his design work is largely confined to modern racing yachts. And he did some more research on the design work of Thomas McManus, who is the designer of Adventure and many other vessels in the Gloucester fleet. And he was able to conclude that Adventure's rudder is less wide than is ordinary for McManus rudder. And it might be easier to understand if I have a moment to share my screen. Is that possible?
You should be able to share your screen, so.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. Stand by for just a moment, please. Okay, so here is a profile view of the rudder and the adjacent area. And so what Jim Taylor was describing was that this rudder almost certainly had a fuller cross section in a horizontal dimension, and the likeliest cause was that the outermost strake, so the outermost plank of 8 or 10 inches, had started to show wear. And at some point in the past, whether in her career as a fishing vessel or in the windjammer trade, it was simply removed. And lopping off rotten things was not an uncommon practice for fishermen in the age of schooners, up to and including shortening vessels by cutting off the entire transom and just building to the shortened dimensions rather than trying to restore it to full length. The rudder post is here. It's a little bit obscured by the scaffolding, but this is the piece that runs vertically up through an aperture into the steering gear. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. It could, or is likely to include the project cost by 20 to 25% for just the work on the rudder. And now that we've discovered that there's a distinct possibility that this is the case, we'll proceed to do as much research as we need to fully confirm that, so we can restore it to its proper original dimensions. Plans for Adventure herself, like many of the fishing schooners of that era, are incomplete. They're often shared with the scanlings were often shared between several vessels. So in other words, there are several vessels built to the same plans. So that's where we would do the research. And that is that's the sum total of the project.
Great, thank you. So I have two questions to start. So would this mean that you guys, I mean, not to say, Carrie, I don't know if you would be asking this question. I don't want to steal it from you. So would this mean that this new work that you've kind of discovered, is that going to be, where you're going to have to ask for, are you going to ask for more money, or is that going to be something that you would fundraise for separately? So would this new work with the rudder, expanding it, or if that's what you're, or the vessel stem, would that be included into your CPA request at this point?
No, not necessarily. This rudder project is just a piece of what we planned for the next haul out. We'd be fundraising around the full scope of work and expense to begin with. And with the expanded scope of work and the additional expense involved, we'll ramp up our efforts to be able to do that. And we have much of the fundraising we do is private. We do have a roster of private foundations that have provided work. We're glad to hear that Charles Nazarian was part of the Save America's Treasures project. Adventure benefited from one of those grants many years ago, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to fit in their grant cycle yet, but things like that, the Mass Cultural Council will certainly be places where we'll look to apply.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If anything changes, please feel free to reach out to us. But we really do appreciate you giving us a nice overview.
Well, excellent. Thank you. And if there are any questions from the committee, I would be happy to answer them at any time. So thank you for the opportunity to apply and present. And I look forward to the next meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Stefan.
So much.
Thanks, Stefan.
Okay. Good night.
All right. And last but not least, the Sawyer Free Library.
I have promoted Mern and Jennifer, I believe.
Yeah, Jenny?
Jenny, yes. So if you just want to unmute, you should be able to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see, my video isn't working, or?
Right, yeah, you're not on video.
Oh, how do I get on video? I only see a mute, unmute. Is there another way of getting on video?
Next to the mute button, there should be a start video
Oh,
button.
there we go. Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, and Jenny's here too. Excellent. Yeah, so we're both here on behalf of the library, and Jenny is also available to answer questions as well as myself afterwards. So I would like to share my screen, so I'll start doing that. Okay. Okay. Move this over here like so. Okay, great. So good evening, CPA committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present our Saunders House project. Oops. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm Mern Sibley. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the library, and with me is the library director, Jenny. And yeah, so the Saunders House project is a historic preservation project. Can I somehow get a little more like the whole thing to show up? I'm not, are you guys seeing the whole thing? I sort of have our faces in the way, but not that they're great faces.
I think on the bottom right bar of the PowerPoint, you can push like it looks like a screen icon to the left of the minus button, or it's the left on my screen.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think, yeah, there we go.
That's pretty good. Yep, great. Thank you. Yeah, so as I said, it's a historic preservation proposal, as I guess everything is tonight. And so the Saunders House, for those who aren't familiar, but probably most people are, it's at the corner of Middle Street and Dale Avenue in Gloucester's Historic District. And the building is on the Register of Historic Places, the National Register. And the Saunders House was built in 1764 as a private residence for Thomas Saunders. He was a wealthy merchant of that time. And it's really a unique building in the grandeur of its 18th century architectural features, including a beautiful, ornate, grand staircase and a lot of original paneling on the first floor that's very rare to see, so well preserved. And another thing that's very interesting is that murals were added to the building in later years on both the first and second floors, and these are of great historic and artistic interest. And I'll talk more about those as I get into it a little bit. So the residence was a private one, but it became a public building in 1884 when Gloucester's great benefactor, Samuel Sawyer, deeded the house for the Sawyer Free Library. And in doing so, he located the public library in the heart of the city, near all its social and political and religious institutions. And so I'm sure some of you like me are old enough to remember when Saunders House was the Sawyer Free Library itself, the original building. And over the years, the building has been very well used for library services and staff functions. And maintenance certainly has been done over the years, but the building is in serious need of restoration and repair and updating. And you should know that the library board has a vision for Saunders House. And our vision is that the building will continue to be joined to the rest of the library campus, but its spaces are going to be used to support and enhance contemporary public library services. So we have a lot of thought of how we're going to do this. So in 2018, the library board commissioned an assessment from preservation architect firm Spencer, Sullivan and Voigt, and this was a very comprehensive assessment that really committed us to bring Saunders House up to current standards without compromising the unique historic fabric of the building. And so really this first phase of the plan is to address the stabilization of the murals in the building and the building structure. And really this first phase needs to be undertaken before initiating any other construction projects that risk further deterioration. So this whole project really has two components that we're asking you folks to fund. The first is the stabilization of the building structure itself, and that's based on an assessment of structural engineer, Structures North, and as seen in this slide, it was basically a lot of work on the sill of the building, timber framing in the main stair hall, and supporting the fireplaces. And then the second important component is the murals up on the second floor, which are in the Anderson Room. Maybe some of you guys remember as the old children's library. And so that will be done. We have mural conservationists ready to do that. We've gotten some estimates. And basically, before you do any of this other construction work, you need to consolidate the paint and plaster and get that stabilized. And so I want to say a little bit about these murals. They wrap around the perimeter of the Anderson Room upstairs, and they're quite magnificent in their seascapes and marine scenes that are pretty unusual. You don't usually see Gloucester schooners floating around in icebergs. It's very interesting. And culturally, they're significant in that the artist who painted them was Howard Curtis, and he played an active role in Gloucester's art community for over half a century. He won many awards and prizes. He was very well known nationally. And also he had the local distinction of teaching art at Gloucester High School for 34 years. And also historically, these murals are significant in that they're based on sketches by the WPA artist Frederick Stoddard. And he also had assistance from Curtis in painting the murals in the main stair hall of Saunders House, so the ones that are downstairs. Some of you may be familiar with that. And so thinking about the budget of this thing, all the expenses really are for professional services that are rendered by contractors who are really specialized and focused on historic preservation. So we have structural engineering work, a mural conservationist, and masonry work and timber frame restoration. So the total cost of the project is $163,395, and we're requesting matching funds from CPA grants in the amount of $81,697. So the remaining amount is going to be funded from the Library Corporation if we're given the grant. And so in terms of the schedule, we anticipate about a 6-month time frame of work, starting in February of next year and finishing in August. And really, the milestones of this project will be based on the percentage of completion of the work, on the structural repairs, and also on the mural restoration. So thinking about the overall benefits of this project, there are many. First of all, it will really animate the historic district a lot because we'll have a lot more activity with display of art that's beautiful and also as a venue for public events and meetings taking place. We're going to be preserving unique 18th century architectural features, including the main stair hall and the fireplaces with all the structural work we're going to do. And we will also importantly restore public access. For many, many years now, the second floor of the building has been off limits to the public, and we're going to be working to restore public access. We will be protecting the historic and cultural value of the murals and the house for everyone to enjoy, whether you're a visitor to Gloucester, a resident, a student of historical finishes. Definitely that will be, the protection of those will be very valuable. And so the work will really extend the lifespan of these historic assets for at least the next 50 years. And another point is that will provide a valuable meeting space because in Gloucester, we have a lot of need for community meeting spaces. In fact, as an example, the fiscal year before the pandemic, there were over 1,700 uses of library meeting spaces by over 50 community organizations and groups. So there's a big need for people to get together and meet. And the Anderson Room is a great asset because it has a capacity of about 25 people. So you can have a nice big meeting in there, which is great. And then finally, getting back to our original assessment in 2018, there's a lot more work that needs to be done for the renovation of Saunders House down the road. That includes making the first and second floors completely handicapped accessible and also upgrading the HVAC system, which is in dire need of that. And so to think about community support for this project and for the work we're doing, the Gloucester Public Schools are definitely a partner in a lot of what we do, as well as Wellspring House, which uses Saunders House for their work and has been for some years. And also we have support from people in the community that are known as very knowledgeable people in our historic properties around town. And you see some of their names there. So to summarize, it's really a very practical and feasible project that can be completed on time and on budget. And really it takes grant funds that you would be so generous to provide and leverage them with funding from the Library Corporation. So that's the end of my presentation. And at this time, we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? No?
No?
I have a quick question.
Great.
I do have a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. I know that the library is undergoing a major fundraising effort. And could you tell me how this fits into that overall project they're doing.
Right. So yes, you're right. The library is getting started on a big project to expand and renovate the 1976 Monell building. And Saunders House is really a kind of a parallel project, if you will. We also, as you see, are very interested in renovating that building. And we are really looking very seriously at a lot of grant opportunities to do that. That's going to be the primary funding. So obviously you folks are a good local source, but also we're going to be hiring a grant writer very soon to help us really look around and, you know, beat the bushes for historic property grants. I know they're out there. So really, I think of it as something we're working on in parallel with the main library project.
And the main library project, what's the fundraising amount for that?
Oh gosh, it's a little bit, it's about 20 million. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes, so the total project cost of the renovation and expansion project is 28 million. And we have a provisional grant award from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for just a little over 9 million. So the fundraising from private sources will be 18.7.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, Matt, go for it.
Hey, Mern, good to see you.
Good to see you, Matt. Class of 74. Yay.
Absolutely. I actually had two quick questions. One is, I think I was on the second floor of the Saunders House once years ago, but
Okay.
has it been, actually, I might have been on a Middle Street walk just a couple of years ago, but is it generally off limits because of just the structural work that needs to be done?
You know, it has a lot to do with, it's off limits because a lot of it is staff offices, one reason. Another reason is it's not ADA accessible. So, there's an accessibility problem. I guess are there other reasons, Jenny, why it's off limits to the public?
I would just also say that the condition of the upstairs, that there's work that needs to be done.
Yeah, in
to
terms
make
of large numbers of people, yeah.
Yeah, to make it suitable for public. Yeah.
Right. And the other question I had was once this project is completed, you could have public access. Public groups could schedule the room to be used for a meeting if they wanted to. And I guess they do that through the library.
Yes, it will be done through the library. Yes. Yep.
Right. Good. That's all I had. I love those murals.
They're great, aren't they? Such an asset.
Great. Jennifer Lee, you got a question? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Not now. Okay, thank you. It's hard to mute me. I love those murals too, and I was there on I think it was a Middle Street walk. So if we're expanding use for the public, how is the restroom situation?
Oh, that's definitely some of the next work we're going to go on. Yes, we're working on having handicapped accessible bathrooms on both the first and second floors, which is not the case now. So yeah, that's important.
So there will be adequate restrooms.
Yeah, and in a future project, right? So this project is only about.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying.
That's definitely something we think is important. Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a pet issue of mine that there are never enough public restrooms anywhere, and Gloucester is sadly short of public restrooms.
They will be there on both floors. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you both for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Your consideration. Yeah.
Thank you. And if you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. We really appreciate you being here.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bert.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys. All right, so that's it for the presentations. It's a long meeting, sorry. We just have one more thing on the agenda. It is to talk about the Magnolia Historical Society project extension. I believe everyone's probably fairly up to date on this. We've reached out to them, let them know that they need to give us an update or we're going to rescind the funds. They got back to us and gave us a quick update. Due to COVID, everything got really kind of slowed down on their project. They were able to do the first portion of it, the electrical work, and they are in the queue due to the backup of work. They're in the queue to do the rest of it and expect to have it done this fall. So we're going to extend, we'll vote on that to extend their contract to December 2021. Jamie, does that sound right?
Yep, that would be
Okay.
great.
Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on it before we move along?
My only comment is I'm glad they're there. It would have been nice if they could have responded a little bit earlier to your repeated efforts to try to get a hold of them. But I'm glad they're there, and I'd love to see them finish it.
Yeah. Remind me, how much money is it?
Jamie, off the top of your head, do you? I don't
know off the top of my head. I will look it up though.
Yeah.
Ballpark?
If I had to guess, I think it was around 25,000.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Don't quote
I
me.
actually thought it was less than that.
Was it?
I'm looking it up right now.
I think it's 25,000. I'm looking at one of the
Okay.
spreadsheets. Is that the HS building? Magnolia HS building?
That's the 2019
Bill's right.
project?
Yeah, it's 25,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you're right.
My memory was better than I expected.
Pretty good, Jamie.
Yeah, so they submitted their report to Jamie, and so we should be good. And now that we kind of gave them a nudge, I think they'll be a little bit more responsive.
Okay.
Great.
Good work. Thank you.
I know. Thank you, Matt, for drafting that letter. It worked. So does anyone want to make a motion to extend it to December 2021?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to extend the Magnolia Historical Society's application to December of 2021.
Seconded.
Great. And Jamie, do we want to do a quick roll call?
Yes, we have to. Pam,
Yes.
Jennifer Lee,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. So that is it for tonight. I believe we're not having a meeting next month, and we'll see each other again in August to deliberate. So
Can I just, Pam, can I just ask a question, being new to this process? Just what are the next steps? Because, you know, looking at this amount of money, we have about 600,000 being requested. So what would be the next steps for the next meeting and moving forward?
So the next meeting, I will kind of really get into the details of them. We'll talk about what might be eligible, what isn't eligible, what we feel comfortable with, and kind of start really making some decisions. Jamie, I don't know how we're dealing with site visits, if that's something, I mean, it's been a long night, so I don't know if we want to talk about it tonight or if we want to do it over email. But that was something also we might want to consider. But the next step is kind of just really getting in, going through each application one by one to kind of hammer out the details.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely won't get into scheduling site visits, but if people wanted to give a sense of which applicants would require site visits, I'm hesitant to discuss anything like this via email. I really never want to cross the open meeting law line. So unless it was just a conversation between Matt, Pam, and myself, which I feel like it makes more sense to do the whole committee. So if people have a sense of which applicants they think would require site visit, I believe Bill and Carrie, if I'm wrong, I think you've already visited, was it Ocean Alliance, the paint factory?
Yes.
But so if people just had a sense of which ones they wanted us to schedule, then that would give me the ability to start getting them booked.
So a question, is a site visit need to be governed by open meeting law? I didn't think so.
I don't think
No.
so. Yeah.
So, you know, all the project applicants have been very happy to, you know, and they've all said, if you want to come by, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My thought was, and I know I've got research I want to do on a couple of these. that's outside of a site visit, but in the course of doing that, if I wanted to go to someplace, would it be inappropriate, Jamie, to, say to the committee, hey, I'm going to schedule to go visit this project if anyone else wants to join me? I guess if it's just one of us, it's fine, but if it's all of us or a quorum of us, is that a problem?
I think it's only really a problem if there's an actual discussion of things that should be on an agenda, right? And I haven't ever really run into a quorum at a site visit. It's, scheduling amongst 9 individuals is never, never goes that great.
Right.
But I wouldn't, if people happen to show up and there is an amount, I don't think that it would be an issue if you're just going over the application, which is already public information. If you bring back a report to the committee that then can be entered into the public record, right?
Right. Good.
So want to get an opinion, that's fine.
I asked that question in follow-up to what you asked, Bill. To me, between now and August 3rd, it's, each of us has different levels of interest in different projects. I think we should satisfy ourselves with any open questions we might have on the projects by reading through the applications and noting any questions. Secondly, Jamie, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, which is, can you confirm the amount of funds that we have available to grant in this round? And whether it's in excess of the projects that we have applications for?
Yes, I can certainly do that.
That way we don't need it now, but for August 3rd. So when we talk on August 3rd, we've got that.
Yes.
So that's what I'm going to do. And I encourage everybody else to do the same. If there's, and if I do end up scheduling a visit with somebody, I'll let everybody know via email.
And man, that's a good point, because, I wanted to visit a few of these places that I'm not familiar with, just to get a lay of the land. And I didn't know how to go about. I was just going to just drop by and check the place out. But if I can't do that, I should.
I just email them. I mean, like if you wanted to go to see the Hammond Castle and see the arches, I would just email, the folks there and schedule it.
Sure.
And then maybe what I would say is like Matt, if I understood you correctly, if you're going, you send something out and says, hey, I'm heading over there at 1 o'clock on Tuesday.
Yeah.
If you're free, you can join. Because
yep, exactly.
Fewer Google Doodles and fewer machinations. And I've enjoyed the site visits I've gone on, any number of them. And as you said, people are happy to share and show. And of course, it requires planning, but people want to show off their spaces and what they're asking for. So.
Great. That's a great point, Heidi. Thank you.
Good. All right.
Great.
That's all I got.
So are we ready to adjourn? Do we need to do a roll call to adjourn now? Yes. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Cool.
This
And
meeting.
a second, Heidi? Yeah. And let's get a roll call.
Pam.
Yes.
Jennifer Lee.
Yes.
Heidi.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I will see you all in August and enjoy your July and your 4th of July. And thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great.
everybody. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Happy summer,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.